Welcome to Money Talks. I'm Cathy Yang, your intel on the Philippine markets and the economy. In the headlines, the IMF likely to caution against financial market stress due to the high uncertainty linked to Trump's tariffs. Philippine markets play catch-up as trading resumes following an extended Easter weekend. So how do we in the Philippines navigate Trump 2.0? We speak with Raul Joseph Jojo Concepcion of Concepcion Industries and Economics Associate Professor Luis Dumlao of the Ateneo de Manila University. The release of its global economic outlook, the International Monetary Fund said last week it expects slower growth due to tariffs imposed by U.S. President Donald Trump. But IMF Managing Director Kristalina Georgieva predicts that the world will avoid a recession due to a strong labor market and solid financial system. The forecasts were put together before Trump launched his reciprocal tariffs on April 2 and then paused them a week later for 90 days.
When countries put an obstacle in the form of tariff and non-tariff barriers, the flow diverts. Some sectors in some countries may be flooded by cheap imports. Others may see shortages. Trade goes on, but disruptions incur costs. Our new growth projections will include notable markdowns, but not recession.
Meanwhile, Trump has lashed out once again at the Federal Reserve Chair, Jerome Powell, for refusing to cut interest rates. The president posted last week on his Truth Social account that Powell's termination, quote, cannot come fast enough. The Fed's chair's term will expire on May 2026, and Trump cannot fire him out of policy differences. Trump's broadsides come, as Powell said in a speech last Wednesday, that the tariffs complicate the Fed's two main goals, stabilizing inflation and maintaining a healthy labor market. Powell also said the Fed would await clarity before adjusting interest rates.
For the time being, we are well positioned to wait for greater clarity before considering any adjustments to our policy stance. We understand that elevated levels of unemployment or inflation can be damaging and painful for communities, families, and businesses. We will continue to do everything we can to achieve our maximum employment and price stability goals.
Trump urged the Fed to follow the footsteps of the European Central Bank, which eased rates on Thursday by 25 basis points, offsetting the economic blow of tariffs. The move marks the seventh cut in 8 meetings, bringing borrowing costs to their lowest level since 2023.
So the economic outlook is clouded by exceptional uncertainty. Euro area exporters face new barriers to trade, although their scope remains unclear. Disruptions to international commerce, financial market tensions, and geopolitical uncertainty are weighing on business investment.
U.S. markets capped last week's session mixed. Trading last week ended on Thursday as markets were closed for the Good Friday holiday. Tensions rise between Trump and Powell caused the Dow to slide by over 1%. S&P 500 ticked up by 0.1%, and the Nasdaq fell by 0.1% as well. Benchmark 10-year Treasury yields inched up, settling at 4.325%. And gold prices declined to $3,308 per troy ounce. Some Asian markets, such as Australia's ASX 200, were closed last Friday. But in other equities that traded Friday, most ended higher. South Korea's Kospi up by 0.5%. Japan's Nikkei 225 rises by over 1%. And China's CSI 300 climbs by less than 0.1%. Taiwan's TAIEX index gains by nearly 0.3%. And Asian markets are mixed at the get-go this Monday. Take a look at the Kospi. It is up by about 0.1%, and the Nikkei 225 down about 0.4%. The ASX 200 is closed for the Easter Monday holiday. And the Philippine economy is predicted to grow slower this year, possibly falling below 6%. This comes as the U.S. imposes reciprocal tariffs on its trading partners, including the Philippines. The ASEAN +3 Macroeconomic Research Office, or AMRO chief economist, or Ircor, says the Philippine economic growth may fall because of these tariffs, despite strong domestic demand. Even so, he says the country will be less affected than its neighbors because of its strong service sector, especially the BPO and KPO. Meanwhile, here at home, Finance Secretary Ralph Recto expects a 6% GDP growth in the first quarter. If realized, a 6% growth in the January to March period would be slightly faster than the revised 5.9% expansion in the first quarter last year. It would also hit the lower end of the Philippine government's 6 to 8% target range for this year. The Philippine Statistics Authority will release first quarter GDP data on May 8th. Says now is the time to reignite manufacturing in the Philippines as Trump upends World Trade Order. With us now for more is Raul Joseph Jojo Concepcion, Chairman and President of Concepcion Industrial Corporation, a leading provider of consumer lifestyle and enterprise solutions in the Philippines. So good to see you, Jojo. Welcome to the program.
Good morning, Cathy. Thank you for inviting me.
So what strategies now do we align as we go through this 90-day pause? As it is, we've got 10% tariffs on top of the 17, which have yet to come, while China and the U.S. are slugging it out with 125% tariffs and 145%.
I think, today is the time we have a strategic opportunity to expand our manufacturing base in the Philippines. I think many countries and companies are looking, because of the tariff differentials, to move away and to deleverage against China because of the 145% tariff. The temporary 90-day shutdown is, eventually that will go. And I think the general trend basically is companies are deleveraging from China because of the tariff and because of the other situations. And as a result of that, then you will see, I think, an opportunity in the Philippines to invite manufacturing to come in. And this is the time, I think, we have that small time frame to invest, to ask people to come into the Philippines.
And you speak as a manufacturer because you have a plant in Cabuyao, Laguna, and you've already expanded beyond air conditioners, you've got lifestyle solutions, and you also have joint venture partners. So what impact has 10% tariffs had so far on business?
Well, during the last week or 2 weeks, we have had a lot of calls from our alliances of partners. Not even myself, but also other business people I've talked to that they're asking basically if we can manufacture them for the U.S. and export. So that opportunity is available to us today, and the ability now to do that, I think, is very important for us.
And the answer is,
definitely yes, we can. I think we have the opportunity. We just have to work smarter. I think right now government has, and together with the private sector, has to look for those opportunities and then obviously focus and pursue that. We've got to look at, making Philippines a destination. We've got to broadcast down on marketing as well as put up really the support services that help companies that are willing to transfer here partner with local companies like ourselves, or to find their way through the maze of dealing in operations.
Well, what would be the upside, though, apart from the comparative tariffs at 17%, but the second lowest in the ASEAN? What have we got going? Why are they calling us now when in previous years they didn't? They went to Vietnam, they went to Thailand and Malaysia.
Well, the key there obviously is the tariff differential. 145% versus 17 creates a comparative advantage really in the Philippines. But the second, if you look at the longer perspective, we live, and I've seen this with a lot of our alliance partners, we live in the biggest and the most fastest growing regions of the world, with the largest populations in the world. And the opportunity base and demand will go up, and products will go up, and they will have to be manufactured. And I think there's an opportunity for us, Philippines, to take center stage in that as we do that, right?
Sounds like just a window of opportunity here because it's 90 days and other ASEAN countries have already spoken with the U.S. on negotiations.
Well, it's a 90 days, but I think you have to look at the longer term of where this is going. eventually this will continue, this trend will continue, and Philippines will be considered as one of the bases to possible to export from. It's an opportunity because, in the past, they never looked at the Philippines anymore. Many of the countries looked, and with all our challenges in the Philippines, have decided to go other countries. So today, with this differential, and if we can take advantage of this, could be a stepping stone, really, of creating a fully fledged manufacturing facility, a roadmap for the Philippines.
But it has to be a movement in unison.
It has to be a
Between the
movement
government and the private sector. Are you feeling that the government is being proactive to help the private sector achieve its goals?
Well, I think honestly the government has a lot of plans and programs. Working in unison, I think it can be improved.
How so?
Very much a strategic roadmap on how to come in. In many cases, when you look at manufacturing, and manufacturing basically is very critical to the development of the Philippines, that we look at manufacturing equals exports, right? And we should really look at the manufacturing because as a impetus really for the development of the country. We should start basically small, right? There's so much, 100 million people here. Asia Pacific is 600 million people. GDP is going up. We can look basically at developing and seeing what are the products we need. This is what we did in our company, basically. We looked very much at the needs of the Philippines, and then we produce those products in the Philippines. So over 50% of what we produce today is for the domestic, of what we produce is for the for the Philippines.
Would a free trade agreement work? Because that's what the economic czar, Frederick Goy, is going to go to the U.S. to negotiate with.
I think
free
it
trade
will,
agreement.
but then everyone is negotiating. I think you have to, it's good if it helps, but at the end of the day, I don't think that is something that's sustainable in the long term. I mean, economic fundamentals, manufacturing fundamentals, companies don't come in and invest just because of trade deals, right? We come in on the longer term. Is the country ready for the infrastructure? Do you have the logistic facilities, the downstream industries? Do you have the people basically for manufacturing? And that I think is much more sustainable. And this is where we have some advantages. I mean, we used to have a lot of disadvantages. Today, you can take those disadvantages into advantages, right? I mean, 100 million people, very young population. You take our, basically, because we have not invested in manufacturing, we have the ability to leapfrog with the new manufacturing automated factories in the world, basically, to be able to globally compete. And then, of course, you have a large base that you're looking at.
We got about a minute, and I'm meaning to ask you, with the heat index up, are aircon sales also moving up?
I'm the only guy that loves heat, right? Definitely.
I do too.
Yes.
I don't like too much cold.
But definitely with the heat index there going up, then aircon demand is very much much higher, basically.
So you're finding that the consumer is intact. Consumer spending is intact, and it's a strong market out there.
Yes, the domestic economy is there. Philippines, basically, we love to spend, we like to go out. And I think the domestic economy will continue to grow, even despite the challenges we face.
All right, well, warm regards to your dad, Raul Concepcion. Thank you so much, Jojo, for the opportunity.
Okay.
Jojo Concepcion of Concepcion Industrial Corporation. And you're watching Money Talks. Coming right up, protests against President Donald Trump across the U.S. And how do we navigate the U.S. tariffs? We speak to Associate Professor Luis Dumlao of the Ateneo de Manila University for a continuation of our conversation here. Keep it here on One News. to all Easter holiday makers. It is indeed the Philippines' first workday back after a truncated work week that ended last Wednesday after the Easter break. Well, ASEAN markets were up last week while the S&P 500 index closed over 2% down. Let's take a look at this combo chart here. The S&P 500 index represented by these candlesticks here. Don't get confused. They all ended lower and lower on the consecutive days that we were all away from Monday, Thursday, and Good Friday. S&P 500 down over 2% from the end of April 15 until the end of the work week. Thailand's SET index, though, this red line here, ended up 1% during our holidays here. And Indonesia's Jakarta index, the purple line you're seeing, ended up 1.6%, and Malaysia's KLCI gained over 1.5%. Well, perhaps the Philippines will play catch-up at the start of this week. Let's take a look at the Philippine peso. Looks like that's begun trading since 8 a.m. Manila time, and the peso's opened stronger at 56.64 to the dollar. The local currency closed Wednesday slightly weaker at 56.80 against the greenback. As for the Philippine Stock Exchange, it is now trading higher. Looks like we are playing catch-up. Well, at least in the first 15 minutes of trade, 6,143 from 6,134 ahead of the long holiday weekend. Much to look forward to with gritted teeth. The IMF releases its new Economic World Outlook on Tuesday, April 22nd at 9 p.m. Manila time. The day after, purchasing managers' indexes for Japan to Europe to the U.S., offering a first look of manufacturing and services activity since Trump's Liberation Day tariffs now partially on pause. A meeting of Group of 20 finance chiefs takes place on April 23 and 24, just as central bank decisions in Russia and Indonesia come through. And in between these, a key Eurozone wage indicator, the Fed's Beige Book, and the University of Michigan's revised consumer sentiment and inflation expectations, all to be released before the week is out. Is Associate Professor Luis Dumlao of the Department of Economics at the Ateneo Manila University. Good to see you, Luis. Welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, and I know you've been hearing what we talked about, Jojo and I, about him saying that this is the time to revitalize the manufacturing sector in this 90-day pause. What do you make of it?
If it's just manufacturing, then it's always an opportunity. If it's European car versus US car, it's a complete competition, car versus car. But we have to articulate with the US that we are partners. For example, we do have a deficit in electronics of roughly $4 billion. But what we export to them are parts, which the US can complete as manufactured end-user products, which they can export around the world, including to the Philippines. So in that sense, we're not competition per se, but we are trading complements.
So it's complementarity that we have to articulate.
Yes, yes.
To the negotiating team is going to Washington, D.C., try and say that we're partners. We complement,
Yes,
we do not compete, because I just figured out that we actually export widgets that go into
spare parts,
ships, to even aircraft and cars.
Yes, yes, ignition parts, wires, which they use to manufacture to something of a complete product, which again they can export. We do import from them. We import from them, which is what the second one that we import, over $1 billion is animal feeds, including to pets. And we don't create them, so we're partners. This is something we import from them, but these are something we don't produce and we need. So and then again, cereals. We import cereals from them, and then the second one is ignition. We export to them ignition. Mm-hmm. So it's not really. I don't know why we should sit down basically as partners, not as trade competitors.
Right, and that's exactly what Economic Czar Frederick Go is going to do when he visits the U.S. Trade Representative in Washington, D.C. Mm-hmm. He's looking for a free trade agreement.
Yes,
is that something that he could iron out?
Oh, it's free trade is always the first best. That's given. But we should also not be naive into thinking that absolute free trade is possible, because it's the United States, for political reasons, will never get rid of its subsidy on its USDA products, the agricultural products. That's the reality of it. So we have to rely on second best, and that's why we have to sit down together and get to something that's something to free trade, closest to free trade as possible. Knowing, albeit that we should not be naive, that absolute free trade is possible.
Exactly. And we also have to think about our neighbors because they're also trading partners, the ASEAN, China. I mean, China's already visited 3 ASEAN countries, and we weren't included in there. But I know that you did cite in your Business Mirror opinion column, it is therefore up to the Philippines to position and to market itself as an alternative hub of production, given the smaller tariff on us.
Yes.
So
yes.
what sort of a benefit will these ASEAN partners have when they start to talk with us, if they haven't started to talk with us?
Well, we also have to talk with them. Let's face it, it's not just the U.S. who is a victim of this wide trade deficit with ASEAN. As a region, the Philippines, the biggest trade deficit that we have is with ASEAN. The second one is China. And then you look at where the U.S. is complaining to, it's the same suspects, basically. So and that's why it's no coincidence that the biggest tariff that they would impose is on Vietnam, over 40%, Thailand, Indonesia, over 30%, and Malaysia, over 20%. So it's really, let's not sugarcoat it. It's not going to be good for everyone, including us, but we can minimize the cost. We have to market that what will be imposed upon us is the second lowest in ASEAN, only second to Singapore, which is 10%. Ours is 17%, by the way.
So as a final point then, do you think that we should be working with China to minimize the loss of perhaps a few percentage points or a GDP?
We should try to take advantage that others would be diversifying instead of putting all their eggs in China in terms of manufacturing. We're not going to get them all, but it's just an opportunity to get some piece of the action. We still have to talk with China. In the end, they're all our partners, and let's not be naive. Let's look at the fact that we do, even us, we have deficits with the same usual suspects. And suspects, not negative, but suspects in the sense that it's the same country where U.S. and everyone else, including the Philippines, have deficits with.
I see. I hear the message there of just talk. Just
Yeah.
keep talking
Yes.
to get to a negotiation. Thank you so much,
Thank
Luis.
you.
Really appreciate it. Luis Dumblao of Ateneo de Manila University. Well, Maynilad has invested nearly 4.8 billion pesos in 2024 to replace old and leaking water pipes across its concession area. The company replaced 142 kilometers of pipelines in areas including Muntinlupa, Las Piñas, Pasay, Makati, and Quezon City. These pipes were installed between 1986 and 2008 with diameters ranging from 50 to 700 millimeters. With the upgrades, Maynilad recovered around 37 million liters of clean water per day, which is enough for over 230,000 customers. Maynilad President and CEO Ramoncito Fernandez says replacing aging pipes helps improve water supply and cut losses. Since 2007, Maynilad has replaced over 3,200 kilometers of pipes, covering about 70% of its inherited system. Coming up after the break, Pope Francis makes a brief appearance to deliver his Easter message. Stay tuned on Money Talks on One News. Welcome back to Money Talks. I'm Cathy Yang. With just weeks left before the midterm elections, the latest SWS survey reveals a slight shakeup in the rankings of senatorial candidates. Senator Bongo and ACT-CIS Representative Erwin Tulfo still lead the survey rankings with 45 and 43% voter preference respectively. However, on the decline, broadcaster Ben Tulfo slid from the top 3 to a tied 7th to 8th after losing 3 points. Former Senator Ping Lacson also fell to the 11th place after ranking as high as 7th last month. Climbing up the list, Makati Mayor Abby Binay is now in 9th. Las Piñas Representative Camille Villar jumps to 10th, both staying into the Magic 12 after hovering between ranks 10th to 15th in the previous months. Meanwhile, former Senator and boxing champ Manny Pacquiao secured the last slot in the Magic 12 with 25% of voter preference. The survey was conducted from April 11 to 15 with 1,800 registered voters nationwide. Lines from around the globe. In India, a 4-story building collapsed in New Delhi that has killed at least 11. The collapse took place at around 3 in the morning Saturday. Authorities also pulled out at least 14 of the 22 people who were inside the building before the collapse. Police are still investigating the cause of the incident, though the structure was 20 years old and not structurally stable. In the U.S., protests erupted in different parts of the country to decry Trump's executive overreach. Some protesters said Americans are under attack by their own government and need to stand up against it. Organizers opposed what they called Trump's civil rights and constitutional violations, including his open defiance of a Supreme Court ruling ordering the return of a mistakenly deported man, his efforts to scale back the federal government. And still in the U.S., just hours ago, the New York Times reported Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth shared details about strikes in Yemen on March 15th in a private Signal group chat, which included his wife, brother, and personal lawyer. Among the information that Hegseth disclosed included flight schedules targeting the Houthis. These details were also shared in a Signal group chat with the editor-in-chief of The Atlantic, who was mistakenly added by National Security Advisor Mike Waltz. This second group chat, named Defense Team Huddle, was created by Hegseth himself. And before we go, Pope Francis appears in an open-air Pope mobile for the first time since surviving double pneumonia. The 88-year-old pontiff sitting in a raised chair in the back of a white vehicle at the St. Peter's Square on Sunday. Pope Francis gestured with his hands but only raised them slightly to greet the faithful and bless the children. His Holiness also appeared at the end of the Vatican's Easter Mass for a twice-yearly blessing and message to the city and the world, wherein he called for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza and the release of hostages, highlighting the suffering of children. Earlier that day, Francis held a meeting with U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance, who visited Italy over the weekend. The Vatican said the meeting with Vance was brief, lasting a few minutes in order to exchange Easter greetings. And that is it for Money Talks. Happy Easter Monday, everyone. I'm Cathy Yang. Catch us again tomorrow, 9:30 a.m. here on One News. Have a great day ahead.